Jefferson was the primary author of the Declaration of Independence. The document's social and political ideals were proposed by Jefferson before the inauguration of Washington. At age 33, he was one of the youngest delegates to the Second Continental Congress beginning in 1775 at the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War, where a formal declaration of independence from Britain was overwhelmingly favored. Jefferson chose his words for the declaration in June 1775, shortly after the war had begun. The idea of independence from Britain had long since become popular among the colonies. He was inspired by the Enlightenment ideals of the sanctity of the individual, as well as the writings of Locke and Montesquieu. He sought out John Adams, an emerging leader of the Congress. They became close friends, and Adams supported Jefferson's appointment to the Committee of Five formed to draft a Declaration of Independence in furtherance of the Lee Resolution passed by the Congress, which declared the United Colonies independent. The committee initially thought that Adams should write the document, but Adams persuaded the committee to choose Jefferson. Jefferson consulted with other committee members over the next 17 days and drew on his proposed draft of the Virginia Constitution, George Mason's draft of the Virginia Declaration of Rights, and other sources. The other committee members made some changes, and a final draft was presented to Congress on June 28, 1776. The Declaration was introduced on Friday, June 28, and Congress began debate over its contents on Monday, July 1st, resulting in the omission of a fourth of the text, including a passage critical of King George III and Jefferson's anti-slavery clause. Jefferson resented the changes, but he did not speak publicly about the revisions. On July 4, 1776, the Congress ratified the Declaration, and delegates signed it on August 2nd. In doing so, they were committing an act of treason against the Crown. Jefferson's preamble is regarded as an enduring statement of human rights, and the phrase "all men are created equal" has been called one of the best-known sentences in the English language, containing the most potent and consequential words in American history. Not only was Thomas Jefferson the primary author of the Declaration of Independence, but he was the orchestrator of the matrilineal destruction of the Aboriginal natives of America. In order to understand this plan, you must first understand the matrilineal marriage system of the Aborigines, which led to their destruction. Matrilineality is the tracing of kinship through the female line. It may also correlate with a social system in which each person is identified with their matriline, their mother's lineage, and which can involve the inheritance of property and/or titles. A matriline is a line of descent from a female ancestor to a descendant of either sex, in which the individuals in all intervening generations are mothers, in other words, a mother line. In a matrilineal descent system, an individual is considered to belong to the same descent group as their mother. This ancient matrilineal descent pattern is in contrast to the currently more popular pattern of patrilineal descent, from which a family name is usually derived. The matriline of historical nobility was also called their agnatic or uterine ancestry, corresponding to the patrilineal or agnatic ancestry. Matrilineal surnames are names transmitted from mother to daughter, in contrast to the more familiar patrilineal surnames transmitted from father to son, the pattern most common among family names today. Imagine if the United States had a matrilineal marriage system, where an African American male married a European woman, and the children of this marriage would be considered to be of 100% European stock. I want to show you the three-point plan that I believe was utilized against the Aboriginal people. This three-point plan, in my opinion, was orchestrated by the presidential administrations of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, Quincy Adams, and Andrew Jackson. I will first demonstrate that it was President Thomas Jefferson who put this three-point plan into motion. The first part of this plan was to encourage the Aboriginal natives to adopt the European lifestyle by building houses, farming animals, and by keeping crops. The second part of this plan consisted of controlling trade with the Aborigines. The U.S. government began building trading houses all throughout the land, which allowed them to lower their prices, and this in turn caused private traders to get out of the business of trading with the Indians, as the trading houses had lower prices. What was introduced to the natives with respect to the trading houses was credit. allowing the credit of the natives to get so high that they could not pay. So the natives would sell some of their lands in order to have the debt forgiven. Lastly, the most diabolical part of this three-point plan. Step 3. I call it the matrilineal deception, which European men would get married to Aboriginal women, targeting the daughters of the king or chief of the tribe, because it was the women who owned the land and it was the men that defended it. By getting married to a daughter of the chief, the European male would have access to the lands that belongs to his wife. The first two of these points can be summed up in one letter. A letter in which Thomas Jefferson says, and I quote, "You will also perceive how sacredly it must be kept within your own breast, and especially how improper to be understood by the Indians." This letter was written by then President Thomas Jefferson to a man named William Henry Harrison. It was written on the 27th of February in the year 1803. In it, he writes, "You will receive herewith an answer to your letter as President of the Convention, and from the Secretary at War, you receive from time to time information and instructions as to our Indian affairs. These communications, being for the public records, are restrained always to particular objects and occasions. But this letter being unofficial and private, I may with safety give you a more extensive view of our policy respecting the Indians, that you may the better comprehend the parts dealt out to you in detail through the official channel, and observe the system of which they make a part, conduct yourself in unison with it in cases where you are obliged to act without instruction. Our system is to live in perpetual peace with the Indians, to cultivate an affectionate attachment from them by everything just and liberal which we can do for them within the bounds of reason, and by giving them effectual protection against wrongs from our own people. The decrease of game rendering their subsistence by hunting insufficient, we wish to draw them to agriculture, to spinning and weaving. The latter branches they take up with great readiness, because they fall to the women, who gain by quitting the labors of the field for those which are exercised within doors. When they withdraw themselves to the culture of a small piece of land, they will perceive how useless to them are their extensive forests, and will be willing to pare them off from time to time in exchange for necessaries for their farms and families. To promote this disposition to exchange lands which they have to spare and we want, for necessaries which we have to spare and they want, we shall push our trading houses, and be glad to see the good and influential individuals among them run in debt, because we observe that when these debts get beyond what the individuals can pay, they become willing to lop them off by a cession of lands. At our trading houses too, we mean to sell so low as merely to repay us cost and charges, so as neither to lessen or enlarge our capital. This is what private traders cannot do, for they must gain. They will consequently retire from the competition, and we shall thus get clear of this pest without giving offense or umbrage to the Indians." The last paragraph of this letter reads, "I must repeat that this letter is to be considered as private and friendly, and is not to control any particular instructions which you may receive through the official channel. You will also perceive how sacredly it must be kept within your own breast, and especially how improper to be understood by the Indians. For their interests and their tranquility, it is best they should see only the present age of their history." And there you have it. You can go to founders.archives.gov to find many documents like this. But for the sake of time, I'll leave you with these two, as they cover the first two of the three-point plan to destroy the Aborigines. Let's look at another private letter from Thomas Jefferson, written to a man named Benjamin Hawkins. It was written just 9 days prior to the letter he wrote to William Henry Harrison. "Although you will receive through the official channel of the War Office every communication necessary to develop to you our views respecting the Indians and to direct your conduct, yet supposing it will be satisfactory to you, and to those with whom you are placed, to understand my personal dispositions and opinions in this particular, I shall avail myself of this private letter to state them generally. I consider the business of hunting as already become insufficient to furnish clothing and subsistence to the Indians. The promotion of agriculture, therefore, and household manufacture are essential for their preservation, and I am disposed to aid and encourage it liberally. This will enable them to live on much smaller portions of land, and indeed will render their vast forests useless, but for the range of cattle, for which purpose also, as they become better farmers, they will be found useless and even disadvantageous. While they are learning to do better on less land, our increasing numbers will be calling for more land, and thus a coincidence of interests will be produced between those who have lands to spare and want other necessaries, and those who have such necessaries to spare and want lands. This commerce then will be for the good of both, and those who are friends to both ought to encourage it. You are in the station peculiarly charged with this interchange, and who have it peculiarly in your power to promote among the Indians a sense of the superior value of a little land well cultivated over a great deal unimproved, and to encourage them to make this estimate truly. The wisdom of the animal which amputates and abandons to the hunter the parts for which he is pursued should be theirs, with this difference that the former sacrifices what is useful, the latter what is not. In truth, the ultimate point of rest and happiness for them is to let our settlements and theirs meet and blend together, to intermix and become one people, incorporating themselves with us as citizens of the U.S. This is what the natural progress of things will of course bring on, and it will be better to promote than to retard it. Surely it will be better for them to be identified with us and preserved in the occupation of their lands than be exposed to the many casualties which may endanger them while a separate people. I have little doubt but that your reflections must have led you to view the various ways in which their history may terminate, and to see that this is the one most for their happiness. And we have already had an application from a settlement of Indians to become citizens of the U.S. It is possible, perhaps probable, that this idea may be so novel as that it might shock the Indians were it even hinted to them. Okay. The last point, the one that I call the matrilineal deception. The B.A.N.G is in the process of producing that content. So this video will not have the third part of the plan to destroy the Aborigines that lived in the southeastern parts of America. I regret not being able to share it with you on this video, but I promise you that when you see the content that the B.A.N.G is putting together, you won't be disappointed. So, if you haven't already, subscribe and click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we add the video entitled The Matrilineal Deception. Feel free to leave a comment or a question. Thank you for watching. Now, this B.A.N.G content will end in 3, 2, 1.